Hey guys, I am just going to be talking to you a little bit about how this assignment in Note Page is going to be for you guys. It's going to be a little bit different than before. What I mean by that is I'm going to upload this to Edpuzzle and I'm going to embed questions within this video. So what's going to happen is you're going to kind of follow along with this note page, which I'm going to upload so that you can print it out if you want. But there's going to be not pictures, there's going to be questions that you're going to answer within this, okay? Now, another thing that I'm going to say is that I am going to upload a worksheet 15 that also goes with this note page 15. And some of those questions are going to be the questions that are embedded in this video, and other questions are going to be extra credit. So if you wanted to do those problems for extra credit, then you can do them for extra credit and basically take a picture with Google Class, or take a picture with your phone, upload it to Google Classroom, and you'll receive extra credit for this assignment, okay? There are quite a few problems on it that you can do for extra credit, but for this specific assignment, what I'm looking for is through Edpuzzle, it tells me, have you watched the whole video? So I'm going to say, have you watched the whole video? And then have you answered each of the questions that are within the video? So if you've answered each of the questions and you've watched the video, then you get full credit for this assignment, okay? So that's gonna be kind of what we're doing. So I'm going to switch over to our hovercam so that you can see the note page. So the note page here is, again, our note page 15, and I'm gonna make the screen the whole page, okay? And so let me know at the end of this if this is something that you like or something that you don't like. And from hopefully for future assignments, I can kind of get an idea if you want to continue to this or not, okay? Now, a couple things to note about this note page is that it asks us to use a protractor. You guys probably don't have access to a protractor, so we are not going to do that part of this note page. So you can kind of just understand that that is not something that we can do because we don't have access to a protractor, okay? But we're going to do everything else on this note page. So we're going to continue talking about geometry, and so we want to talk about angles because angles play a huge part in the world, and so we need to be able to identify angles, and we need to be able to write angles down so that we can kind of specifically look at what angle we're looking at, okay? So an angle is a figure formed by two rays with the same endpoints. So what it basically just means is that you have these two rays, so you have a point that start, and then it goes off in forever direction, okay? The common endpoint is called the vertex. So for instance, where they both meet is the vertex. So if I was naming the vertex, this would be Q, okay? If I was naming the vertex here, this would be K. If I was naming the vertex here, this would be E, okay? So our vertex is going to be where the two rays meet up, okay? The rays are the sides of the angle, okay? So when we look at sides here, we're looking at QR and QP, okay? So the sides would be our vertex to our point and our vertex to our point. On this, our side would be KL to KJ. And this would be EF to ED. Okay, so our vertex to the part of the ray, our vertex to the part of the ray, okay? The angle measurement, again, that would be part of our protractor. So I'm going to give them to you, but just realize that you would have to use a protractor to figure this out. So this is about 50 degrees, this is about 125 degrees, and this is about 130 degrees, okay? Now, to name our angle, this is the most important, is you name it several ways, okay? You typically always are going to start from one point of the ray, go to the vertex out. So you could say this is angle PQR, or you could say this is angle RQP. The biggest thing that you have to understand is that the Q is in between the two outside letters, okay? Now, sometimes you're able to just label it angle Q, and that's just your vertex point. Sometimes you're not. So it just depends on what the question is asking you. Sometimes you have to have all three letters, and sometimes you can just have one. So for instance, if we labeled this one, notice that our vertex is K, so that has to be in the middle. So this would be LKJ, and then this would be JKL, or if we could just label the vertex, it'd be angle K. And this symbol, by the way, is a symbol for angle. Okay, so this means angle. So it's not just like a sideways L. Okay. So this one, again, your vertex is E, so that has to be in the middle. So we could say angle DEF, or angle FED, or angle E if we can just name it with the vertex. Okay. So the question that I'm going to have for you is on the first problem on your worksheet. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions in regards to this top problem, problem number 1. Okay. So if you need to pause to look at this problem while you answer it, please do that. But I want you to answer the questions in regards to problem number 1. Okay. So the next part of the note is, again, talking about drawing your angles using a protractor. We can't really draw the angles using a protractor, so I just want to kind of just go over your vocabulary here. Remember that inside the angle is called the interior part of the angle, and the outside is the exterior part of the angle. So if we were to draw 30 degrees, we would normally not just eyeball it, which is what I'm doing right now, but we would measure it with the protractor, which we don't have. And then notice that it has CHS. So H is the middle, so that has to be our vertex. And then C can be on top or it could be on bottom. And then we want to label it as so forth, okay? This is a 90-degree angle. So if you wanted to, you could even add a 90-degree side here, or you can just put 90 degrees. And again, notice that C is the middle, so that has to be your vertex. And again, your A can be on the top or your A be in the bottom, but you want to have all 3 letters representing. And then 110, again, you would not normally just eyeball this. You would actually figure this out. So this would be your X, this would be Y, and this would be your Z, and you would want to label it with 110 degrees, okay? So I'm not going to ask you to actually draw angles for this class because we are not expecting you to have a protractor at home, okay? Now, on top of talking or labeling your names of your angles, you also need to identify their degree measure. So when you classify them, you should be hopefully familiar with these terms, but there's an acute angle, which is less than 90. There is a right angle, which is exactly 90 degrees. There's an obtuse angle, which is more than 90 degrees. And then there's a straight angle, which is exactly 180 degrees, okay? So when we look at this, we need to understand that if we looked at the measurement, we'd be able to tell whether it's acute, right, obtuse, or straight. So if we looked at these examples, this would be an acute because it's less than 90 degrees. This would be a right angle because it's exactly 90 degrees. And this would be an obtuse angle because it's more than 90 degrees, okay? So for the next question that I want you to do is I want you to look at figure 2. Okay, so figure 2 right here. And I want you to tell me, if I looked at COA, what type of angle would that be? Okay, so COA, what type of angle would that be? Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about adjacent angles. Okay, so adjacent angles just basically mean they're angles that add to be 180 degrees, but they're next to each other. So for instance, if we had X and Y here, X plus Y would equal 180 degrees, okay? So if I told you something was adjacent, you would know that 2 angles are next to each other. They don't have to necessarily be drawn like this, but if I added them together, they would give me 180 degrees, okay? All right, so let's talk about the angle addition postulate. This is very, very similar to segment addition postulate, except it's with an angle. So for instance, if I wanted to draw this angle, I have point S is the interior. So I have an S. And then the angle is PQR. Okay. So when I'm looking at this, we want to make sure that we first draw our angle correctly. So we have our P first, and then our Q, because that's the vertex, and then R. And then since it says point S is inside or interior, it's going to be in between these angles, okay? So that's really important to be able to draw this first. Now, a lot of the times we're going to draw the figure for you, but when we don't draw the figure, you need to practice being able to do this, okay? So let's look at how we can use the angle addition postulate for this. So with the segment addition postulate, it was one side plus one side equals the total. It's the same premise for this. They're saying one interior angle plus one interior angle equals the total angle. So we have this interior angle of 72 plus the interior angle of 10x, and then that's going to equal our total. And they say that the total here is 112. Okay, so we're saying smaller angle plus smaller angle equals bigger angle. Okay, and so we can use the angle addition postulate to help us set up this equation and then solve it. So to solve it, we would minus 72 to both sides. And when we minus 72 to both sides, we get 40. And then we divide by 10, and we get x is equal to 4. Okay, so that's one way that we can use the angle addition postulate. Okay, another way this is actually the exact same example. I'm sorry. So another way is if you're not given the inside, but you're given the outside as an x and solving for it as well. But that's not on this note page. I apologize, it's on the next one. Okay, so if we wanted to do this, it says find y given that KLM, so our larger one is 135 and the insides are 2. Okay, so what I want you to do for this problem is, I'm not going to do this on the note page. I want you to actually do this as your Edpuzzle question. Okay, so it's going to be kind of the same setup as this, except you have a y instead of an x, and then you solve for y. Okay. So once you answer this question, that's the end of your note page. So I wanted to go back to your worksheet 15, okay? So back to worksheet 15. So we did question 1 and we did question 2 in Edpuzzle. What you can do for extra credit is the remainder of the assignment. So you can do 3, 4, 5, you can do 6, and 7, okay? So if you do any of those problems, you're going to get extra credit, and depending on how much they ask you, you're going to get a point per part, okay? So for instance, like on this one, you could get 4 points for this one if you correctly answer these, okay? So for this one, you could get 2 points for graphing, 2 points for substitution, and then another point for answering C. For this one, you can get 2 points for simplifying both of these. This one you can get 2 points, 1 for length, 1 for midpoint. This one you get 1 point for classifying the angle. So if you do this whole assignment, then you can get quite a bit of extra credit for this assignment. If you want to pick and choose, like maybe you're like, I don't get how to do most of these, but I want to do number 4 because I remember how to do 4. You can just do 4 and that's fine. Or you can pick and choose, maybe you just want to do 7. You do not have to do the whole assignment for extra credit, but just make sure that you take a picture